The situation in Severodonetsk raising alarm from human rights organizations. The Norwegian Refugee Council, for instance, issuing a statement expressing horror at what's happening in the city that once housed its operational headquarters in the area. Up to 12,000 civilians are caught in the crossfire without sufficient access to water, food, medicine, or electricity. Christian Jepsen joins us to tell us more. He's Regional Communications Advisor for Asia, Europe, and Latin America at the Norwegian Refugee Council. Mr. Jepsen, thank you very much for being with us. First off, what's the situation like for those civilians in Severodonetsk? Are you able, and are you now unable to deliver them aid?
Thank you. So, as we have heard, the situation is absolutely horrific in Severodonetsk and in other conflict hotspots in Ukraine. So we have thousands of people in bomb shelters and basements. And as you just mentioned, they're running out of food and drinkable water, medicine. They're also lacking electricity. So we have been able, through partners, to deliver aid up until last week. But now, because of the heavy fighting, we're simply not able to enter the city.
And you visited Ukraine in March of this year, and you'd actually also been in the Donbass before that in 2021, when the conflict was actually limited to that part of the country. Can you describe the situation for civilians there at the time, and how much has been lost now with the invasion?
Yeah, I can start by answering the last question. Everything has been lost. So I visited the small villages close to the front line, which no longer is the front line as we understood it that back then. And they were completely cut off from the rest of the Ukraine. Mostly old pensioners were sitting there in bombed out houses, many of them without electricity, without running water. And they literally had lost all hope. We managed to restore some hope, some places, repairing houses, restoring electricity and running water. I spoke to these old pensioners, and for many of them, they've gotten used to the situation where shelling was a daily occurrence. So as I interviewed these people, I heard shelling, I heard it was hitting nearby, and they hardly looked up. I mean, they were so used to the situation year after year. But as we spoke about it, they broke down. It's been incredibly hard. And now this escalation of the war and everything that they have, the progress that has happened, is lost.
And the Norwegian Refugee Council has had to really completely shift its operations in the country, because it was geared for one thing before the war began. It was geared for what was happening in the Donbass. But now you're dealing with this huge number of internally displaced people, maybe over more than 14 million people that have been moved around the country. What does your operation look like now, and what are you working on?
This has completely shifted our operation. In fact, before the escalation of the war, we were about to close down and hand over the operations to local partners. But overnight, we've had to completely shift our attention. We have to shift our staff. The majority of our staff was actually in Severodonetsk, but they have had to move to other parts of the country. And so we have set up new field offices across the country and in the neighboring countries. So we, together with partners, local partners, we're trying to shift the attention to this new, extremely large number of people that has been displaced, both within Ukraine and to the neighboring countries. And this is a massive effort. I mean, we've heard these numbers now for months, and I think we've almost gotten too used to them. But it's 14 million people, more than 14 million people displaced inside and to the neighboring countries. It will take a massive effort for not only the NGOs, but the whole international community to actually begin to solve some of these problems.
Christian Jepsen is a communications advisor at the Norwegian Refugee Council. Thank you very much for being with us on France 24.